In Huntsville, there's the Space and Rocket Center. I don't know very much about space at all, but we do know that small things rotate around big things, okay? Like the moon rotates around the Earth. Well, when I started the business, I was the big thing, and the business rotated around me. Well, then what happened? The business grew to the point to where then the business got bigger than me and started to sling me around.
Just had to make that similar decision of like, I can continue trying to grow as a filmmaker, or I can just figure out how can we scale this business? Like how can, do I have to be the one that is continually improving, or can I find other people? Can I continue to invest in the people that I have? So that, I'm not doing all of the things. But I would say like it's probably one of the biggest struggles that a creative has.
You know what? Ideas are everywhere. Implementation is everything. Whether you listen to a podcast, you read a book, you go to a course or whatever, you're going to hear a lot of really good ideas, but nothing changes until something changes. And it really is never the ideas, never. Ideas in and of themselves are worthless. But ideas with implementation or execution, they can change your life and then consequently change the business.
On episode 404, we talk about how to shift from being the rainmaker to the architect of your business. And we go over the 5 key milestones that show that you've truly become the architect. And trust me, I know so many of you want to be the architect, whether you know it or not, based on my conversations with you. And then finally, we go over some practical steps to start systematizing your business, even if you're creative. You got this. It's a great episode. Glad you're tuning in. What's up, friend? Hey, welcome to another episode of the Grow Your Video Business Show. I got this. You think that I wouldn't have done this over like 400 times or something like that. Yes, it's me, your favorite host, Ryan, and I'm so glad that you're with me today. This is a fun episode. I think you're going to learn lots. Systematizing business might sound, I don't know, like way beyond like being a creative or a DP or a director or a writer or any of that stuff that we probably were drawn to when we started our businesses. But let me tell you, if you take the things that we talk about in this episode and you can apply them, you will find so much more freedom to be creative and to grow and to scale and I think be more profitable and lots of other things. But there is some work that we have to do in our businesses that isn't the most sexy, but it is, I think, incredibly crucial. Another thing that I believe is that your voice, your approach to video production, your approach to storytelling is absolutely unique. And you're probably doing this work because there's some calling in your life to create. And I want you to be able to do this for a long, long time. And the way that I've found, in the way that I've chatted with so many other people who have found, is you have to build something that is sustainable, which means you have to be profitable, which means at the end of the day, when you charge people monies, you have to be able to save some of that money. Like you have to be charging more than just $25 an hour. I mean, I throw that number out there just as a number. But if you live in the United States, $25 an hour full-time equates to about $50,000 a year. And for most people, if you're by yourself, that's tough. That's tough to build a business where you actually have to buy equipment that costs thousands of dollars, and you have to pay taxes. And then if you have kids or a mortgage or anything like that, or you want to buy presents for your spouse, like the more money you can have, the more things you can do with it. So I want you to be profitable. I've come so far in my belief of having money is bad, to man, the more money you have, the more good you can do, at least with the things that cost money. I mean, there's plenty of good things you can do that cost $0. So don't mishear me. I strive to do good things every day that don't cost money, like smile at people when I'm in the grocery store. Yeah, I'm that weird guy that will smile. So that's me, just trying to brighten somebody's day. Anyway, I am thrilled that you're here. I'm totally digressing. I should script out this whole intro. So I've been doing this 20 years, video production business, team, studio, Metro Detroit area. If you want to look at what we do production-wise, go to tellstudios.com. It's TELL studios.com. Super fun, super fulfilling work. This work that I get to do where I'm educating other video business owners is very fulfilling. I love doing it. So much so that I'm hosting the 5th annual in-person event called the Onward Summit at our studio in a couple of weeks, I think from this episode, or maybe just a week or something like that. And maybe some of you are listening to this episode as you're like on the plane coming to my studio to hang out for a couple of days, and I can't wait to see you. If you are in a spot where you would like to grow more in your business acumen and build something that's sustainable and profitable and all that stuff, the show is perfect for that. But I also have designed a workshop that is built just for you. It's called 10X Filmmaker. This is also a coaching community, and there's lots of things around 10X Filmmaker that we are building. But I have resources for you. If you go to studiosherpas.com/10X Filmmaker, you can see what the community is all about. I have a free workshop there that you can get access to. It's totally free. You don't have to buy anything. I'm not going to stop you from buying the things, but you can access it. I want to equip you with tools and resources that allow you to do this work for as long as you feel like you're supposed to be doing it. So go check that out, 10X Filmmaker, studiosherpas.com/10X Filmmaker. And that's all I have to say right now. I've got more after the episode, but let's get into the episode right now. Roll the tape. Here we go.
What's up, friends? Hey, welcome to another episode of the show. Today with me is Bradley Hamner, who is the founder and CEO of BluePrintOS and also host of the Above the Business podcast. Bradley, super excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Ryan, thanks so much for having me. I really do appreciate it. I think this is going to be killer. I can't wait.
Cannot wait. Where in the world are you, or where are you from? I'm trying to figure out the accent here.
Well, you can probably see my hat. I'm an Alabama guy, so that's an Alabama hat. That's actually a state of Auburn hat. We're coming up on college football season. Huge college football fan. So I'm a proud graduate of Auburn University. So I'm coming from Huntsville, Alabama, the north part of Alabama.
Love it. That's cool. And we're hailing from Michigan over here, so we can just. Probably don't need to have much of a conversation. I mean, hey, you're on top of the world right now. Although I saw some news in the last 24 hours about Jim Harbaugh, so we'll see where that goes. Well, he's not with us any longer, so no big deal there. But gosh, what a mess. Anyway, tell me about BluePrintOS. What is this?
Yeah, well, BluePrintOS originally kind of started to solve my own problems that I had in business. I mean, at the end of the day, I started my business with 2 skills. I knew how to bust my tail, and I knew how to sell. And those came from, I picked up my hard work from my dad. My dad's a farmer and has been a farmer his whole life. And so my dad didn't teach me that. I just caught it. I mean, you just see what your dad goes through with planting season and harvesting season, trying to get, the crops out of the field. And he worked 7 days a week, and that came out of the sacrifice of missing a lot of my games, et cetera. But I picked that up from my dad, and I'm so grateful for that. And then my previous careers before I started my business were in sales. And so I knew how to sell, and I knew how to work hard. And that's exactly what I needed to do in the business. And well, it worked until it didn't anymore. And then I was like, well, okay. I mean, I'm completely burned out. We can get into that if we want to. And I thought about going back into the corporate world. And I said, well, I got to make a change. I didn't know what the change was. I started to finally figure out what it meant to actually create systems and processes in the business. I did not know at the time that what I was actually creating was really an operating system for the business to run on. And so today we really share with other business owners what it means to upgrade their operating system from it being dependent upon them to actually having an operating system that runs independently of them in the business. And that's what we do.
I think that for a lot of us, when we start in this work, everything just becomes normal, and it's like, yeah, this is just what we have to do. And we develop, I think some of us develop really terrible habits of like, oh, it's just like rise and grind, man. Like I just gotta, from sun up to sundown. And then enter like my story is like, Andrea and I were newly married. So we didn't have a blueprint for marriage, that everything was still so new, and we were trying to figure out our rhythms. And then, 2-3 years into being married, then we start having kids, and then that changes. But then, like everything inside of me is like, well, I mean, the whole reason why I want to run a business is so that I have some freedoms in life.
Yep.
And the reason why, or one of the reasons why I'm married, is because I want to have kids, and I want to be present for my kids, and I want to go to, all of their games and all of the things. Similar to your story, my dad worked midnights. He worked overtime all the time. And I did not see him very much growing up. And so for me, it's very, very important. But you get in the mix of running a business, and a lot of that can be sacrificed. A lot of the reasons why you get into business can be sacrificed. So in your experience, like what's the thing for a lot of us that has become normal that you're like, guys, like it doesn't have to be like this?
Yeah. Well, I think that the hardest part for me is that what I was doing, working 7 days a week, emulating what my father was doing subconsciously. And I didn't realize that at the time that I was just basically doing what my dad was doing, is that here's the thing, it was working. It's real easy to go back and say, well, if something's not working, then eventually, you'll make a change. But the business was growing, the business was successful. So what happens is, look, I'm in Huntsville. So like, here's the kind of an analogy for people. In Huntsville, there's the Space and Rocket Center. So you get the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. And so we know, I don't know very much about space at all, but we do know that small things rotate around big things, okay? We know like the moon rotates around the earth. Well, when I started the business, I was the big thing, and the business rotated around me. Well, then what happened? The business grew. The business was successful. It was doing good. We were winning, industry awards, et cetera. So the business got bigger, to the point to where then the business got bigger than me and started to sling me around. That's what was happening. Does that make sense? And so then it was like, oh my gosh. So what happens is now it's gone from, I won't work every Saturday, but I'm going to work this Saturday. And then before you know it, I go to church on Sunday, and then I'm back to working on Sunday again. And then we're going on family vacations. I'm at Disney. I have a picture of at the Disney Yacht Club in the lobby of 2 computer screens. And it says, I took a picture, and it says, better never stops even on vacation. See, that's how messed up I was at that time. And it was literally a month later is when I didn't know at the time. I thought I was having heart issues. I ended up having panic attacks. I mean, that's what it was. But it felt very real to me, to the point to went saw an internal medicine doc, went saw a cardiologist. Come to find out, actually, when I've shared that, I've had a lot of our people we talk to and our business owners have shared, you know what, I actually have had panic attacks too. So it's actually become like, oh my gosh, okay, this is not an uncommon thing for entrepreneurs that they've experienced that. And so the cardiologist says, look, you're 34. I don't know what you got going on in your life, but you need to change it. And he just walked out the door. He's like, there's nothing wrong with your heart. But I didn't know what to change, Ryan. I mean, like when what you have been doing, it wasn't like it was staring so obvious in my face. Oh, Bradley, just go back to your office and start to document what you're doing. Like it was not that at all. And so it really took a chance encounter. A few months later, I was in Toronto. I joined Strategic Coach. You're probably familiar, heard of them. And so we were doing this exercise, which is now documented in the book. 10X is easier than 2X. It's I can't remember the name. Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy wrote the book. So that book came out last year, but we were doing that exercise. Yeah. And so the guy I'm sitting next to, he says, well, last year we did 40 million top line. I made 5 million personally. And so here's what 400 million and 50 million would look like. And I was like, wait, what? And he was a financial advisor. So in my head, I had it in my mind that he was doing, I don't know, 500,000, 750,000 in revenue. So when he said 40 million, I was like, wait, what? How much do you make? And so he said, well, you go. I said, I'm not about to go. Are you kidding me? That's my numbers are embarrassing compared to your numbers. And he said, hey, look, man, It's just systems and processes. And I rolled my eyes and said something smart back to him. It was like, come on, man. I've heard that so many times. Everybody says that. I'm so sick and tired of hearing it. Nobody ever shares with me what it is. It's almost like the Wizard of Oz. And he said, look, I'll show you. And so at lunch, he shared with me, like, this is what it looks like. And I remember still to this day, the documents he shared with me. And he said, Bradley, I just got my business out of my head. And there was something about, maybe it was the fact that a few months prior, I'd had that, health scare. So I thought it was. Or maybe it was just the fact that I think it was just a combination of all that plus, him doing 40 million in top line. He made 5 million personally. And he was so nonchalant about it. He wasn't bragging at all. He had his hat backwards. He was like a former baseball guy. I mean, it was just, there was such a strange collection of it. And that is the thing that ultimately I said, okay, that's what it is. And so I went back and started that process. And so ultimately, I didn't realize it at the time, but what I was really doing is I was transitioning myself from being the rainmaker to where like it was all dependent upon me to really I started to become the architect of the business. And again, he didn't say that. That's language we use now, but that's what I was really doing is I first worked on me. I became the architect and then everything kind of came downhill from there.
Yeah, that is fascinating. It makes me think about when we had our second kid and I had a small team that was working for me. We were mostly doing wedding films and man, I was learning, I just leaped and bounded, like just my filmmaking accelerated over the course of like 4 or 5 years. But then I got to a point where I just felt like I wasn't like I did not learn all the things, but I was like, man, I don't know how much better I can get. Like I went just like 1,000,000% I got better, but then it was like, barely noticeable. And I'm like, we could charge a lot more throughout the years because our work just got better and better. And I was like, I just don't think that anybody's going to notice and we would see that big of a difference financially. I don't think we're going to be able to charge that much based on, and then we're having our second kid. And for me, I just had to make that similar decision of like, I can continue trying to grow as a filmmaker, or I can just figure out how can we scale this business? Like how can, do I have to be the one that is continually improving, or can I find other people? Can I continue to invest in the people that I have so that, I'm not doing all of the things? And slowly and surely, like, I got out of filming and I got out of editing and I still like get to dabble and, when I want to, not because I have to. But I would say like it's probably one of the biggest struggles that a creative has. It's like, whoa, what do you mean you're going to take me out of the equation? I'm the reason that we're able to produce these kinds of videos for our clients. And I'm the reason that our clients love this company, right? I'm the personality. Like this is, so if they're not working with me, if I'm not filming or taking them through the edit, like how can this even work?
Yep.
So in your perspective with the people that you've worked with, I mean, have you worked with creative business owners where that is something that I'm just saying this because like we need the tools as creatives to figure out how do we do this?
I want to share with you that I don't think it's just isolated to creatives.
Yeah.
I think it's an entrepreneurial thing that we tend to hear things like that is kind of prevailing in the marketplace, which is just do more of the things that you're really good at.
Yeah.
And so we hear that subconsciously. And then what ends up coming from that is some false beliefs of nobody is as good about the video as me. Nobody can really do this as good as me.
Yeah.
Nobody can really sell as good as me. I mean, you can sell some of those things. You can't really sell these things. Truthfully, right before this call, we were doing a 30-minute training with my sales team with BluePrintOS. And we were going over one of inside of our sales process, we call it a discovery call. And it was interesting because I didn't know that you would ask me that question on this podcast. But as I got off that call with the team, I was thinking to myself, it's so crazy that you think that years ago I thought that nobody could sell as good as I could. And the reality is, in a lot of ways, people can do things better than you if you get the right people on the team and then train them. But even if they don't do it as good as you do it, I still love the Dan Martell saying where he says 80% done by someone else is 100% freaking awesome. And I used to just not believe that.
Yeah.
Okay. And I was like, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I don't think that they could do it 20%. And it was arrogant. It was cocky, and it was flat wrong. It's just flat wrong. People they cannot read your mind, but they can read a document. They can't read your mind, but they can read a document. And so what I think I was not willing to face, like the big thing, the boss I needed to conquer, was more of a better question of, I don't know how to train my team.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then that's a better question to then say, if I don't know how to train my team, I can learn or develop the skills on how to be able to do that. Okay. Because I thought, no, I'm so unique. I'm a special snowflake. Nobody can do what I'm doing. It's actually not true. You're following a process. You just may not have ever thought to figure out what your process actually is. And so specifically, I'll just give you an example. You mentioned before we hit recording, you mentioned AI. I will share with you that one of the things I did is we re-recorded some sales conversations that I had. This was years ago with Blueprint. I just took them, put them into script, got them transcribed, threw them into ChatGPT and said, all right, summarize, what am I doing actually? And then it was like, well, you do this every time, then you do this, and then you transition to this. And I was like, oh, yeah, that is my sales process. Wow, okay. So, maybe even if I struggled to kind of figure out what it is I was doing, there are now tools out there that could help me to figure out what it was I was actually doing. And I think it applies whether it's sales, customer service, your creative thought process that you have, et cetera. And so that was a limiting belief that I had. And I would just share that I think it's not immune to just creatives. I really think it's an entrepreneurial thing, especially small businesses doing less than, 5 million in top line.
Yeah. The filmmaking stuff, a lot of it feels innate, right? And when you start and you're like, yeah, I guess I'm kind of good at this and I have a unique angle, and to articulate that, if it's something that's just a part of you, it's really, I've found it's very hard to articulate what that is. It's like, well, no, you just see, like, can't you just tell that the lighting doesn't look great, or the framing is off, or, like it just doesn't feel right. So I think the best tip that I can give to somebody, because I've had multiple, 20 years running this business, I've had multiple people that have been with me for over a decade that have gone and started their own business because I taught, like, they came in with like no editing experience, no filming experience. So I was somehow able to teach them. And then I was having, these guys teach other people, our interns or our new hires. And what inevitably would happen if we ever contracted an editor to help us with a project, and I would delegate this to one of my guys to oversee it, this new editor would get a project to like 60 to 70% done, which again, that's pretty freaking awesome. But then my guys that were training, in their mind, they're like, well, it's going to be faster if I just get in there and take this thing to the finish line. It's going to be faster. We got to get this project out, and I don't have time for all the back and forth. So let me just finish this thing. And what we were missing was this, like, okay, if you could articulate somehow what you don't like about this thing and what you're going to do differently versus just telling an editor, don't like it, make this better. Like, that's not helpful. But when you can help people get inside of your brain and you can start articulating. So instead of finishing the project for this editor, you're like, well, I didn't have to do the first 60 to 80%, but to edit, hit record, pull up Loom or some kind of screen recording thing and go through the changes that you're making make them, but also say like, this cut is just too quick. We're like 2 frames. If you just move to the left 2 frames, you're gonna miss like the mouth opening. So it's not gonna feel like this person's saying the next word. And when you see them start to open their mouth again, it's like, I want to know what they're gonna say. But you don't want people to see that, so that they're not expecting something that you don't want them to expect. So it's like little nuances like that become so much helpful. So as you're building and training a team, you have to somehow articulate the things that you like and that you don't like.
That's so true. And I would say that one helpful thought is mindset, skill set, and tool set. So mindset, to your point, what you were sharing, like, this is how I'm thinking about it. This is how I'm approaching it. And then skills is, okay, now how do I actually do it? Like, utilize, this is what you're actually going to do. You're going to, I'm assuming that they obviously know how to work through the software aspect of it, but like, this is how you actually do it. And then are there some tools that they need to within the business? So like mindset, thinking about it, skills, can I acquire it? Like how do I need to think about it? What are skills I need to have? And then what are some tools I need to be able to use? Mm-hmm. And when I started to see things that, and even I use that today to think, I don't know how to do this. And I'm saying that from a place of not shame of like, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm just such a loser, I'm just a terrible business owner. No, but there's a place of like, I'm not really sure how to do this. Yeah. Let me go about trying to figure out how to acquire the skills. Because what I used to think is that people were just innately gifted, business owners, and they're just so much smarter than me. And they indeed are very, very intelligent, but they have some skills that I felt like I could acquire. And that's been a helpful way to approach certain things in the business, to say, well, I'm not really sure exactly. Like marketing was something that I just, I felt like I was pretty decent on the sales side. Then I was like, I don't know how to train a sales team. Okay, I can get better at that. Well, marketing was something that nobody had ever really shared with me. Marketing, I didn't understand lead generation. I didn't understand lead nurture. I didn't understand messaging and positioning and copy. I didn't even know what those words were for a long time. So I was like, well, I think I probably need to start to acquire the skills of marketing. And that was really helpful to me along the way. And so maybe that frame for people is helpful of like, what are the skills that I need to be able to acquire as a business owner?
I love that. Love that mindset, skill set, tool set. That's a good way of looking at that. Can you take us, I know you have a process of this whole thing, like to go from rainmaker to the architect of your business. Can you just take us through that framework?
Yeah. So what does it really mean? It's like, sounds good to say, become the architect of your business. So what do we mean specifically by that? Number one, it's conceptual from the perspective of you start to see yourself as the architect. You start to adopt the label as the architect. So instead of you being the one that's doing all of the things, you start to see yourself as the one that's designing the systems in the business. And so some language that our members will begin to even adopt, because language is powerful, they'll say, how do I need to architect this, as an example? Mm-hmm. Well, that's great, but then they're also, how do you know? How do you know if you've become the architect of your business? And so there are 5 specific things that we call them the 5 milestones, to know whether or not you've become the architect of your business. And so specifically in our program, that's what we do. We help people become the architect of their business. So those 5 things are, number one, you have a business generating over $1 million in revenue. The reality is 91% of small businesses never cross $1 million in revenue. In fact, 96% of businesses never see their 10th birthday. The odds are stacked against us. And so for a lot of people listening to this, they can already check that box. They can say, you know what, we're there. We're good. We're already there. But for some people, getting to $1 million business is a huge milestone. Yeah. So that's number one. Number two is, we call it the rule of 40. So it's one thing to have a business that's doing over $1 million, but is it growing and is it profitable? And so the rule of 40 is a ratio between your year-over-year growth and your profitability. And we want that to be 40 or above. So number one, we got a business doing over $1 million. Number two, it's growing and it's profitable. Well, number three, if you're doing all of that, but you're working like I was working all the time, and you're not taking enough time off doing things that you love with people that you love, what good is it? So number 3 is you take 12 weeks off. We used to dance around that number, and I finally just said, no, it's 12 weeks off. Because for most entrepreneurs, if you said, hey, you only work 12 weeks a year, they wouldn't take it. Like, they love actually the work. And so we love to help people to architect their year based on 40 weeks. And that, while that may sound like a stretch, it's actually more doable than you think. Number 4, you have an EA to help you buy back your time. We love the way Dan Martell puts that. And so I used to say, having an executive assistant is a luxury. It's not a luxury. It's a necessity as a business owner. It's just a necessity. The reality is it allows you to focus on what you love and what actually accelerates the growth in the business. And $1 million business isn't built on $10 task. Yeah. And then number 5, you actually have installed an operating system that exists independently of you. Instead of it being a you operating system like mine was, you're running on the Blueprint operating system. So there's 5 things. You got $1 million business. It's growing and profitable. You've taken 12 weeks off in a year. You have an EA to help you buy back your time so you can focus on the things that you love. And you've installed an operating system that exists outside of you. If you got those 5 things, you can check those 5. You're the architect of your business.
Yes. I mean, we talk so much. I mean, this whole show is, I think the heart of it is like, as people listen, as people apply the things that they're learning, it's really about working on your business and not just in your business, right? You know, we get used to doing all of the tasks. I had a coaching call earlier this week, and the guy was like, "Man, I got so much to do. This is great." And I said, "Yes, you have to have like daily or weekly time in your calendar that's not movable, where you're working on your business, where you're gonna do these things, because you work on them, then you're gonna get freed up. And if you don't, you're gonna continue to have to do the tasks, and it's gonna feel like nothing is happening, right? It's like when you buy something for your house that nobody ever gets to see, but it's like you have to have it, right? You have to have here in Michigan, we're on a well, and you got to have water softener. Like if you don't have it, like the water's going to feel weird. It's going to taste weird. It's like all this stuff, but it's like not a fun thing to buy, right? It's like, man, it costs thousands of dollars. And if I'm going to spend $1,000, I want a new couch or, a new deck or whatever. But the working on your business, over time, it's going to compound and it will free you up. But in the meantime, it takes time in order to, essentially buy back your time, whether that's through your own time or through your dollars.
Yeah, I agree. That's actually why the name of my podcast is called Above the Business, is because we believe 100% that not only do you need to work in, but you also need to work on. I just also think there's a third dimension, which is working above the business. So we call it on, in, and above.
Ooh,
so
okay.
We can't just live in, we can't just live on. Yeah. There are times that we need to get above the business. And I would even share with someone that listening to a podcast, going to a conference as an example, going to a strategic coach, those are times I wasn't working on that business. I was working above my business at that time. And there are some elements thinking time, having a once a week, 60-minute, structured time in your week to think about the business. That's above the business time. Your quarterly strategic planning is above the business time, things of that nature. So I agree completely with Gerber's on, not in. Love it. I just think that there's a third dimension, which is above.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess probably a lot of what I talk about then is probably more above in the way that you're framing that. That's really good and so incredibly important. If I could attribute, the success that I've experienced, it's because I've done that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm even thinking, in my own business, the area that I've been trapped in the longest is in sales. I'm so good at, on a call, really trying to get to the heart of like, why do you think that you need video, and why right now, and what's going to happen if you don't do it? And
Yep.
I've got all these great questions, and then going from there and building out a custom proposal based on, the success and all of these things. I'm so good at that process. But the unfortunate part is like, I'm the only one that can do that process. I haven't taught that to anyone. I don't know how to teach it to anyone. But the times in my business that have been the most freeing in that realm is like back when we did weddings, we had 3 packages, and I did teach guys, and I had other people selling wedding packages, and I'm like, this is amazing. I don't have to be on this call. Like, they're personable, like this, like they know it. And then they got so familiar with the 3 packages that we offered, then they could start customizing. And they could start thinking like, well, we've done this before, but based on what you're saying and what your goals are, we could also do this. So 20 years into this business, a little over a decade working mostly with corporate, we've tried this a couple of times, and we're finally zeroing in on how do we package what we're doing so that I can start handing this off and other people can start doing these sales. Cause I'm like banging my head against the desk, like in frustration. And I'm like, why am I frustrated? And I'm like, because I'm still required. Like I've figured out how to delegate all of the other things I don't want to do, or have to do any of the other things, but this is the one area. And I'm like, why don't we just go back to what we did when we were doing weddings, do that for corporate. Yeah. And we know the kinds of videos that businesses should have. How do we position it so that businesses realize, oh, yeah, that is exactly what we need. And then I could teach somebody how to sell a package. And then we could, transition one day to where that salesperson is customizing packages. And so instead of a $10,000 or $20,000 package, it's a $50,000 or $100,000, or it's a monthly retainer that goes on and on. So anyway,
I'll share with you that was actually, I ended up having to eat my own cooking a little bit because I didn't decide to get into consulting, coaching thing like I thought it was like some good idea. I fell into it. I mean, it wasn't like a strategic move. We made the changes. People were like, what are you guys doing? And then our first 2 clients that I had with a partner at the time, we basically were running their business. I mean, it was outsourced COO, and we were making $9,000 between the 2 of them. And, we didn't have a team. We didn't have any of that. And I really fell in love with testing some of the ideas that worked in my business. Okay. Can I then apply them to another business? But that wasn't scalable. And then, so I started ended up picking up clients. Well, then at one time I ended up with 22 private clients. And I remember a day that I was just loaded with calls. I mean, it was just back to back to back to back to back. And it was even at the time I had a client that said, hey, I got a really busy day. Is there any way, we could meet at like 7 a.m. He was Eastern time. I'm Central. It was like 6 a.m. I was like, sure. And so from 6 a.m. until 7 p.m., I was in coaching calls, and I was like, I didn't use the restroom. Yeah. I didn't eat. I got done. I had such a pounding headache, and I was like, wait, what am I doing? This is stupid. Like this is, and the other thing was I was saying the same thing. I was saying the same things. And I would say to people, honestly, I wish you were just on that call I just did with Ryan, because I just told him this exact thing. Right. So then I was like, okay, well, maybe Bradley, you have some frameworks. Maybe we need to like put all of this together in an operating system itself. But here's the thing, to your point, I couldn't have had a salesperson because what I was selling prior to that was all customizable stuff. And so then that wouldn't have worked. So I couldn't have had a salesperson. So then when you start to then package it together, put together effectively a productized package. Yeah. I mean, while we've been on this call, Slack messages come in from the sales team. They just brought people on to our program, into Blueprint. That's a good feeling. Now, at the same time though, if I had said to you, Ryan, hey Ryan, thanks for booking us in. I'm not going to be on the call. My EA is going to be on the call. You'd been like, nah, well, I'm not so sure about that. So there are things, and my role is really to, I've got to be the one that's evangelizing the message of becoming the architect of your business, right? I mean, for sure that I really have to be the key person of influence in the business, as Daniel Priestley says. I mean, I love that language of like, it is my job to be the megaphone to get that message out that, in my opinion, becoming the architect of your business, everything hinges on that. Okay, great. And I need to continue to come up with new concepts and frameworks that I think work for our clients, continue to learn and grow myself. But everything else does not have to depend upon me to be able to make that happen.
Yeah, man, that's so good. Yeah. So I just share my own journey for, just for anyone listening that's like, I just feel like every project we do, it feels like because we're creative, we feel like we have to even create like a customized thing. When at the end of the day, you look at, the videos that you're producing for clients, there are things that are, it's the same every time. But, maybe the shots when we were doing weddings, it was like, they always get married at the end of the thing, but how can we tell a unique story? And we figured that out, but it was a process. We did this thing.
Yeah. I'll share with you, and if you want to ask me after the recording, I'll share exactly who it is. You may even know him. He's in your industry, and he has big time clients. NASCAR, SEC. Those are big clients, right?
Yeah.
And so for a long time, that company stalled right at about 3 million. Okay. And which is fine. I mean, like he got into that and into video, kind of fell into it.
Yeah.
And he's a really, really good friend of mine. And he just kept butting up against like everything, all of the creatives had to go through him because he was like, we can't fumble the ball with the SEC basketball tournament, right? Okay, that's a big client. He was undercharging for them and all these other kind of things or whatever. And guess what? He started to try to share that with his team. And guess what happened? The team did mess up sometimes. They did. It wasn't it wasn't exactly what he wanted it to be. But then he started to get out like, okay, what is it I'm saying? And here's what's actually happened with him. And this is the same thing that's held true with me, is he would share it with, let's just say Ryan. Okay. So he would share it with somebody on his team. And then 6 months later, that person would leave. And so now guess what happens? That intellectual property just left with them. And so then he was like having to repeat the same things all the time.
Yeah.
And then he finally just started to say, you know what? I think we need to collect all this intellectual property one place because I said this 2 years ago and I'm saying it again.
Yeah.
So then they started to do it, and then they started to train on how does Clark think about this? Mm-hmm. And then from there, okay, now the company started to actually scale because he did get out some of his creativeness of like, okay, this is what matters. And now he's the guy. Yeah, sure. He has the relationships with a NASCAR and with the SEC. Absolutely. But those are the things that really accelerate the business forward. And then his team is the ones behind the cameras, doing the editing, turning it around, et cetera. And they're doing it at the way that he wants it to be done. And they've been able to scale and grow. And he is a classic creative.
Mm. Yeah, that's so good. So what's your recommendation for somebody that's sitting here thinking, man, I love this idea. I do feel like, everything is revolving around me. I'm the central cog. I'm the bottleneck of this whole thing. How should somebody go about starting to kind of take on this idea of becoming the architect in their business?
I think you just said the first one, and I hope people aren't dismissive of that. When you start to see yourself as the architect, you will start to see things differently in the business. Like wherever you listen to this podcast and you get off of it, whatever emails are in front of you, et cetera, if you see yourself and adopt the label of the architect, like you start to see that I have the architect hat on. I don't have the salesperson hat on. Like we talk about, there's so many hats to wear in the business. I am telling you, the one hat that you can wear that will then potentially eliminate all the other hats is to put on the hat of the architect. See yourself as, how can I design this? Yeah. How can I go about building this? Okay. So versus being the doer. That in and of itself is a huge step in the right direction. It's one of the very first things that we share with our members of adopting that label of being the architect. All right, number 2, I'll give people kind of a specific thing that they can do before you go through. And we talk about like even how to make your documents all look the same. I mean, these are things that I used to ask questions about. But we share with our members, like every single document we have in our business looks the exact same as if Bradley created it or somebody else. And here's why. It drove me crazy. I'd create a document and then somebody else on my team created a document. They'd put pinks and purples and, reds and stuff. And I was like, wait a minute, what? That's I don't like that. It looks terrible. So then the business starts looking like a Frankenstein business. So standardize everything in the business. Let me tell you why that matters. Somebody might dismiss that. And then they say, what does that matter? A client or customer is not going to see our internal documents. Here's why it matters. It's a mindset. It's a mindset that permeates the organization that says, we do things by design. We don't do things by default. We don't do things random in the business. There's a designed element to everything we do. If we care about our Google Docs looking the same, or Word documents, whatever, if we care so much about that, we have a way of doing things, and that matters. Does that make sense? Okay. And so those 2 things alone start to embed and start to change the culture of, no, I'm going to adopt the hat. I'm going to become the architect of my business. I'm going to start seeing myself as the designer and the builder. And I'm going to actually start standardizing the way we do things in the business. That's my recommendation.
Dude, I love it. That's so good. We're actually, I probably have in my Google Drive, like no less than like 8 million SOWs, process procedures, documents throughout the last, forever how long. And it's so garbled and gooky, gross. We just started using Notion and we're like, okay, we're going to start afresh. Yeah. We're going to have this place where these documents are going to live and they're going to look the same because of reasons that you just said. So,
well, and let me just say something about that. So we do believe, like, we love Notion, or so our OS lives in Notion. If I told you and said, where does the OS live? Our OS lives in Notion. Okay. And so in a Notion page, it is embedded with a video, a Loom video possibly, or a Google Doc. So the documents live inside that. What is important though is how that Notion is structured so that people aren't going on scavenger hunts.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
There's a way. So in other words, like in our operating system, it's based on 5 principles, whatever. I won't get into all that. But what it is like you can go and say like, okay, wait a minute. I'm doing a sync with Bradley today. It's likely going to be here. And then it's probably going to be inside this playbook. Exactly. Okay. Well, if you're just 2 levels deep at that point, you can be like, all right, I can find it. But what tends to happen is we just go like randomly searching for stuff and we don't put things based on retrieval. We put things based on speed. And let me give you kind of an analogy around this, and this maybe this will land home for people. We get so random with our documents. I was random with my documents, right? I'm an ADD entrepreneur. I'll spin them up and they're on my drive and whatever. And it's like, why can't you find that? Put it on, So I didn't have a way of doing things. Well, the equivalent of that would be when you do your laundry. You do your laundry and then you take it out of the dryer and then you just start throwing clothes places. You put your jeans under the kitchen sink. You put your t-shirts in the garage. You put your, underwear, in the kids' playroom. You go to the media room, the guys' room, the golf simulator. I'm a golfer, so the golf simulator room, and you're putting your, golf shirts in there, and then you're like, hey, where's my jeans? And they're like, I don't know, where'd you put them? It's like, well, did you look where the jeans are? Yeah, but I just randomly put stuff. Look, clearly, that's such a absurd analogy. Nobody would ever do that. Why? Because you put things where they go so that when you go to look for your jeans, your golf shirts, your socks, etc., they're going to be in the sock drawer. Duh. So therefore, why would we not have the same thing with our organization of our digital files? Like, did you look? Like, it's inside that playbook. That's where it would be. Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. I should probably go to the sales playbook. I wouldn't want to go to the marketing playbook to find how we do our marketing, as an example. And so, yeah, we try to eliminate scavenger hunts in the business.
Oh man, my business is full of scavenger hunts. People love me for it. Oh, Bradley, this has been great, man. Love your perspective. How can people follow along? Obviously the podcast, but where can they find you? And just if they want to reach out and work with you.
Yeah. Just go to blueprintos.com/assets, blueprintos.com/assets. We've got a number of free things that they can check out there, some free tools and some trainings that we have on there if they'd love to get access to that. So go to blueprintos.com/assets.
Love it. Well, thank you. How do you want to leave us today?
You know what? Ideas are everywhere. Implementation is everything. Whether you listen to a podcast, you read a book, you go to a course or whatever, you're going to hear a lot of really good ideas, but nothing changes until something changes. And it really is never the ideas. Never. Ideas in and of themselves are worthless. But ideas with implementation or execution, they can change your life and then consequently change the business.
Drop that mic, get out of here. Thank you seriously so much. So good.
Thanks, Ron. Appreciate it.
Thank you for hanging out, my friend. If you liked this video, please share it with another filmmaker friend that you think would enjoy it and get something out of it. If there's something that you are taking away, something you're going to start doing or stop doing, it helps to write that down. And I would love for you to write that down in the comments section below. If you're watching this, if you're not, you can watch this on YouTube or I think Facebook too. We post it. So yeah, would love to hear your takeaways. If you have feedback or input, or if you need anything, don't hesitate to shoot an email over to ryan@studiosherpas.com. And you can also find me on the socials at Ryan Coral. It's Koral. Also at Grow Your Video Business. And that's it. Make sure to check out 10x Filmmaker, studiosherpas.com/10x Filmmaker. How many other URLs or calls to action can I give you? I don't know, but what I do know is that most people don't listen to a full episode. So I could give you like, the keys to the kingdom right here, right now. And it would probably be like 2 people would be like hearing this. Just kidding. I listen to the full episode, like, when I listen to shows, I listen to the whole thing, but it's weird when you look at the stats, how they fall off before the end of the show. So anyway, there's that little nugget for you. Nuggies. You guys like Wendy's, the commercial with the Kansas City Chief guys? Okay. If you heard this, if you're listening this far, shoot me a message and just say, yeah, I heard the reference to the Wendy's commercials. Those are fun. Okay, that's all. But just so you know, I'm a huge Detroit Lions fan. That's my team. That's where we live my whole life. Barry Sanders, that's my boy. But, I've got a whole new team. We actually have an opportunity. People are gunning for us. This is such a fun football season for us. And it's football season now. Let's go. Okay, I'm hyped up, ready to go. Have an incredible week. Here's to growing your business. Love you so much. See you later. Bye.